Во царстве Твоем помяни нас, Господи.
Chapter 25, on control of the tongue.
Во царстве Твоем.
The greatest necessity of all is to control and curb our tongue. The mover of a tongue is the heart. What fills the heart is poured out through the tongue. And conversely, when feeling is poured out of the heart by the tongue, it becomes strengthened and firmly rooted in the heart. Therefore, the tongue is one of the chief factors in building up our inner disposition. Good feelings are silent. The feelings which seek expression in words are mostly egotistical, since they seek to express what flatters our self-love and can show us, as we imagine, in the best light. Loquacity mostly comes from a certain vainglory, which makes us think that we know a great deal and imagine our opinion on the subject of conversation to be most satisfactory of all. So we experience an irresistible urge to speak out and in a stream of words, with many repetitions, to impress the same opinion in the hearts of others, thus foisting ourselves upon them as unbidden teachers, and sometimes even dreaming of making pupils of men who understand the subject much better than the teacher. This refers, however, to cases when the subject of conversation is more or less worthy of attention. But in most cases, loquacity is a synonym of empty talk, and then there are no words to express the many evils which arise from this ugly habit. In general, loquacity opens the doors of the soul, and the devout warmth of the heart at once escapes. Empty talk does the same, but even more so. Loquacity distracts one's attention out of oneself, leaving the heart unprotected. Then the usual passionate interests and desires begin to steal into it, at times with such success that at the end of such empty talk, the heart has not only consented, but has decided to commit passionate deeds. Empty talk is the door to criticism and slander, the spreader of false rumors and opinions, the sower of discord and strife. It stifles the taste for mental work and practically always serves as a cover for the absence of sound knowledge. When wordy talk is over and the fog of self-complacency lifts, it always leaves behind a sense of frustration and indolence. Is it not proof of the fact that even involuntarily the soul feels itself robbed? Wishing to show how difficult it is for a loquacious man to refrain from saying something harmful, sinful, and wrong, the Apostle James said that keeping the tongue within its rightful bounds is a property only of the perfect. If any man not offend in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. As soon as the tongue begins to speak for its own pleasure, it runs on in speech like an unbridled horse, and bursts out not only the good and seemly, but also the bad and harmful. This is why the apostle calls it an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Long before him Solomon too said, "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin." In general, let us say, like Ecclesiastes, that a loquacious man shows his folly, for as a rule, only a fool is full of words. Do not prolong your conversation with a man who is not listening to you with a good heart, lest you weary him and make yourself abhorrent, as it is written, "He that useth many words shall be abhorred." Beware of speaking in a severe or superior manner, for both are highly disagreeable and make people suspect you of great vanity and a high opinion of yourself. Never speak about yourself, about your affairs or your relatives, except when it is necessary, and even then be brief and say as little as possible. When you see that others speak too much of themselves, force yourself not to imitate them, even if their words appear humble and self-reproachful. As regards to your neighbor and his affairs, do not refuse to discuss them, but always be as brief as you can, even when you have to speak of such things for his good. While conversing, remember and try to follow the precept of St. Thalassius, who said, "Of the 5 attitudes in conversation with others, use 3 with discrimination and without fear. Use the 4th infrequently, and refrain from using the 5th altogether." One writer understands the first 3 as follows: yes, no, of course, or this is clearly so. By the fourth he understands doubtful things, and by the fifth, things totally unknown. In other words, about things you know for certain to be true or false or self-evident, speak with conviction, saying that they are true or false or evident. About doubtful things, better to say nothing, but when necessary, say that they are doubtful and reserve your judgment. Of what you know nothing, say nothing. Someone else says, we have 5 forms or modes of speech. The vocative, when we invoke somebody. The interrogative, when we ask a question. The desiring or soliciting form, when we express a desire or a request. The defining, when we express a decisive opinion on something. The commanding, when we masterfully and authoritatively we express a command. Of these 5, use the first 3 freely, the fourth as rarely as possible, the fifth not at all. Speak of God with all homage, especially of his love and goodness. At the same time, be fearful lest you commit a sin by speaking wrongly, confusing the simple hearts of the listeners. Therefore, listen rather to others on this subject, collecting their words in the inner treasure house of your heart. When the conversation is of other things, let only the sound of the voice enter into your ear, but not the thought into your mind, which must remain unwaveringly directed towards God. Even when it is necessary to listen to the speaker in order to understand what he speaks of and to give a suitable answer, do not forget in the midst of listening and speaking to raise the eye of your mind on high to where your God is, thinking of his greatness and remembering that he never loses sight of you and looks at you either with approval or disapproval, according to what is in the thought of your heart, in your words, movements, and action. When you have to speak, before examining what has entered your heart and letting it pass to your tongue, examine it carefully, and you will find many things that are better not let past your lips. Know, moreover, that many things, which seems to you as good to express, are much better left buried in the tomb of silence. Sometimes you will yourself realize this, and immediately the conversation is over. Silence is a great power in our unseen warfare, and a sure hope of gaining victory. Silence is much loved of him who does not rely on himself but trusts in God alone. It is the guardian of holy prayer and a miraculous helper in the practice of virtues. It is also a sign of spiritual wisdom. St. Isaac says, guarding your tongue not only makes your mind rise to God, but also gives great hidden power to perform visible actions done by the body. If silence is practiced with knowledge, it also brings enlightenment in hidden doing. In another place he praises it thus: if you pile up on one side of the scales all the works demanded by an ascetic life, and on the other side silence, you will find that the latter outweighs the former. Many good counsels have been given to us, but if a man embraces silence, to follow them would become superfluous. In yet another place he calls silence the mystery of life to come, whereas words are instruments of this world. St. Barsanuphius places it above preaching the word of God, saying, if you are just on the very point of preaching, know that silence is more worthy of wonder and glory. Although one man holdeth his tongue because he hath not to answer, another keepeth silence, knowing his time, yet another for some other reasons, for the sake of human glory, or out of zeal for the virtue of silence, or because he secretly communes with God in his heart, and does not want the attention of his mind to be distracted from it. It can be said in general that a man who keepeth silence is found wise and of good sense. I shall indicate to you the most direct and simple method to acquire the habit of silence. Undertake this practice, and the practice itself will teach you how to do it and help you. To keep up your zeal in this work, reflect as often as you can on the pernicious results of indiscriminate babbling and on the salutary results of wise silence. When you come to taste the good fruit of silence, you will no longer need lessons about it.